Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. Quick project for you today, and it's another easy one. This cute little bag. So all it is two pieces of fabric. We do have a pocket on the inside as well here, and it's using a piece of webbing for the handles, which are encased in this fold over flap. So cute, isn't it? You can carry quite a bit of weight in this, and to carry it you'll just hold it like this, just like a regular shopping bag, or you can scrunch the sides over. This fabric is a little bit on the heavier side, but you can easily use a quilting cotton, so yeah, you can easily get that one over your arms as well if you want to. So very quick project, let's get straight to it. Alright, here's what we're going to use today. I'm using webbing for my handles. This is 1 inch wide or 2.5 centimeters. You can make your own, but it's nice to have a little bit of contrast for this one. I want a piece of fabric for the pocket. This is 8 by 10 inches, which is 20 by 25 centimeters. So just one piece there. We want a piece of fabric for the lining. This is 14 by 28 inches, which is about 35 by 70 centimeters. Basically, the rule of thumb for this particular bag, whatever you have in width, you want double in length. All right, so this is just one continuous piece of fabric. So if you wanted to make something smaller that was only, say, 10 inches wide, then you would have 20 inches in length for the fabric. For the outer part of the bag, we want the same. This is 14 by 28 inches again, which is 35 by 70 centimeters. I'm using quilting cotton for the lining and something a little bit more heavy or structured for the outer fabric. This is probably a cotton drill or maybe a duck, but you can certainly use 2 quilting cottons as well. If you feel as though you need a little bit more structure to the outside, put some lightweight interfacing on there and that'll be enough for you. Fold your lining in half, so we've got the fold along the bottom here, and then we're going to fold that in half again. So there's a fold here, and then we've got our raw edges along here. We'll do the same for the outer fabric. Line up your edges and then fold this in half evenly. So what we're going to do now is cut out our corners and the opening. On this raw edge at the bottom here, we're going to measure from the outside edge 4 centimeters or 1.5 inches. And from the fold at the bottom, we're going to measure 3 centimeters or 1.25 inches. And I've made the same marking along the bottom here. So the reason we've got 4 centimeters from the raw edge on the outside is because we're going to have a 1 centimeter seam allowance. So that will be our seam allowance going all the way up, which is about 3/8 of an inch. So that will give you a perfect square once you've taken your seam allowance into account. So we can cut that out. And we'll do the same for the outer fabric. And then we can do the top. From the top, again, we're going to measure 4 centimeters or 1.5 inches. And this time we're actually measuring from the folded edge here. So the raw edge is there, measure from the fold, which is the opposite corner to what we've just done. So 4 centimeters from the folded edge, and then we're going to measure 10 centimetres or 4 inches from the top. And we'll do that for the outer fabric as well. And we can cut both of these out. So this is how our fabric is going to look now. What we'll do is take the outer fabric and bring the fabric right side together and line up these side edges . And we can set that aside for the moment. Grab your pocket fabric, bring the right sides together. So I've got 8 inches along here, 10 inches down here. Fold the fabric up. So we're going to sew from here across and up. Backstitch in this section here. We're going to leave a small opening for turning through. Let's go and do that now. All right, let's backstitch here. And at the end. And then we can flip it over and do the same from the other side. With that pocket done, all we need to do is trim the corners and the side. We can turn this pocket the right way out, and then we'll need to take it back to the machine and top stitch. And we're only going to top stitch the top edge of the pocket where the fold is. Poke your corners out, and you can fold that raw edge in underneath. We don't need to sew that just yet. We're just going to go back to the machine and stitch straight along the top there. All right, so our pocket is ready to go in. We can grab our lining fabric, open that out, and place your pocket somewhere in the centre here. I'm going to place mine 2 inches from this cutout here. We'll fold it in half to find the centre, and we can find the centre of our fabric. And we'll line up those 2 markings, and that will be positioned 5 centimetres or 2 inches from the top edge of the cutout. Pin that in place. So what we're going to do now is sew down the side edge here, along the bottom, and you'll be closing up this opening at the same time, and then we'll sew up here as well. Once that's done, you can bring the 2 faces together. You'll sew all the way down one side, and on this side you're going to leave an opening of about a hand's width. So you start sewing here, finish there, here again, and finish down there. So we'll go and do the side seam for the outer fabric, we'll do the pocket, and then we'll sew up the side seam. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm using a 1 centimetre or 3/8 inch seam allowance. I'll backstitch at the top and the bottom. Flip it over, and we'll repeat on the other side. set that one aside. We'll sew the pocket in place. And now I'm going to put the right sides together and sew up the side seam. So around about where that cutout is where I'm going to stop and backstitch. I'll go forward and leave a big opening there and backstitch again and sew all the way to the end. Flip that one over and we'll sew that as well. The next thing we're going to do is box our corners. So with that cut out here, open the fabric out and pinch the square corner out on both sides. And if you've done your seam allowance correctly, your fabric should be nice and straight right across there. It's really not the end of the world if it doesn't line up perfectly. And we'll do the same over this end. And we'll repeat for the lining. So where that fold is, you can just finger press that fold. Then when you open the fabric out, you'll see that that fold needs to line up with that stitching line that we've created, or that we have. And with that same 1 centimetre seam allowance, we're going to sew across those corners. Now what we can do is turn the lining fabric the right way out. And we're going to line up this side seam with this side seam here, and we'll do the same for the other side. So pop the lining to the inside of the bag, and you want the right sides facing. So the first thing you'll do is find the seam and line up those edges. And where I've sewn this seam here and it's going to my right, the seam for the lining I'm going to push to my left. So that way they're going in opposite directions and they just butt together more nicely than if you have them going in the same direction, especially if you're using really thick fabric. It makes it easier to sew. So we'll line up those edges. And on the other side, I'll do the same. I've got my seam going over to my right, so the lining seam can go to the left. So we've got the long sides clipped together. You want to do the same with this as well now. So you can line up those corners. and the bottom of the opening. And we'll do the same on the other side. Once again, match up those corners. Okay, so we might as well start from the side seam here. I usually backstitch over that. We'll go along here, come within 1 centimetre of the end or of the corner, backstitch into the corner and then out of the corner again. I always like to reinforce my corners. Come down, same on this corner. So it's a 1 centimetre seam all the way around until you come back to where you started. I've just gone and turned the bag the other way around because I want my outer fabric faced up whilst I'm sewing. And I will start at that side seam and 1 centimetre seam allowance. So I go back for 2, forward for 2, then I'll turn. Didn't go far enough. Then I'll go forward for 2 and back. And then on to the next corner. Okay, that's all sewn up. We now need to trim the corners. And then we'll clip into the corners down here. So you want to go as close as you can to the stitching line without cutting through the stitches. And now we can turn the bag the right way out. So find the opening on the side. Poke out the corners on the outer fabric. And we can pop the lining to the inside. Well, actually, let's go and close up this lining. I'll quickly go and do that now. So I'm just going to pinch those edges together and then I'll quickly go and stitch that closed. I'll be right back. So that lining's closed up. Pop that to the inside. And you want to bring out the rest of the corners as well. Probably should have done that before I closed up the lining. And now we can just fold all of these edges nice and neatly. You can give it a press if you want to. We're going to go and top stitch. And we're only top stitching this section here and on the other side. So we'll top stitch this side and this side. We're going to do this top section after we folded it over. So let's take that back to the machine and we'll just sew those 2 openings. I've turned the bag inside out again because I find it easier to sew with the outer fabric faced up. And starting in the top corner, I'll just do a narrow top stitch. And on the other side I'll do the same. Alright, the last thing we need to do with the fabric is fold these edges over. So I'll turn this the right way out for the moment. Move that out of the way. So we've top stitched the inside edges here and along the side here. I haven't done the top section yet because we need to fold this over, and I didn't see the point in stitching twice. So what we're going to do is fold this edge over and sew straight along here. So we're going to fold this over by about 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters. You want this to be wide enough to put your webbing through. So the webbing I'm using is 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch, and that will be plenty to allow that webbing to slide through. And we'll do the same on the other side. Okay, now all we need to do is stitch straight along here and along here. I'm going to back stitch really well at both ends here. Would help if I remembered to hit record, wouldn't it? So with that bottom edge sewn in place, I'm also going to top stitch along the fold. I think that just looks a little bit neater. So on the other side, here's what you missed before. Back stitch right here. And then we'll top stitch again. So we finished the bag. We've made a channel for our webbing to go through. And this is the finished size of it so far. What we need to do is determine how long you need your webbing to be. So if you're making a bag in other sizes, it's obviously going to be different to what I'm measuring here. What we need is double this measurement. So we'll do that twice. And then we need a little bit of extra webbing for an overlap. So how about we just make an allowance of about the gap that we've got in here. So what you want is 2 times the width of your bag, 1 times the width of the opening. And for this particular bag, that measures 30 inches, which is about 76 centimetres. Now what we need to do is feed this through. If you've got a bodkin, that makes the job easier. Press the edges together, push that little washer down, and that will hold the webbing in place. And we can start feeding that through. And if you don't have a bodkin, just use a safety pin. So slide that on through. All the way through, and then come around to the other side and continue on. Keep that nice and flat as you come around. So you can lay that down again, remove the bodkin, and just line everything up nice and evenly. And we have these 2 ends left, and we need to join them together. So I can trim a little bit off. I can trim a bit off here as well, because we don't want these ends to extend beyond here. We want to have this sitting nice and flat. Then lay these 2 pieces over the top of each other. and then clip it together, just the two pieces that need to be joined. And then we can sew that closed. So just stitch a box around there. We'll just sew those two pieces together. So with that stitched, we can now move that into the middle of the casing here. So just slide that across so that it's hidden out of the way. And there's our little handbag finished. You can also scrunch this bag up over to the edges, which will be much easier if you're using a lighter weight fabric. I've opted for the heavier weight fabric just so that it gives it a little bit more stability, or so it's more robust looking. But I think that's turned out pretty good. So what do you think? I really like this bag. It's such an easy one to make and it doesn't take long at all. I think if once you've got your fabric cut out, you could probably get this finished in about 20 minutes or so. It really doesn't take long. So plenty of room on the inside. Of course, I've got my webbing in there because I don't have anything else handy to throw in there. And we do have just a little patch pocket on the inside of the bag as well. You could easily put another one on the other side if you wanted to. If you wanted to go even further, you could put a nice zippered pocket on the outside. But I think this is perfectly fine exactly as it is. I'm not going to make these for the shop. I just don't have time. Oh, why am I saying I won't when I possibly will? I don't know. It's actually a good one to use up pieces of fabric, you know, the back of the sample books that you get. So thinking about it, I could easily whip these up for the shop. I don't know. We'll see if it comes up in one of my top 10 videos, because now that I'm thinking about it, I think that's actually a great idea to use up those pieces of fabric. Watch this space. I don't know how much I would sell it for. Probably about $20 each, I'd say. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.